So today we're going to be looking at Robert Kirkman's 2003 comic, The Walking Dead, which was published under Image Comics and of course which spawned a number of very entertaining and successful shows. Now the comic was groundbreaking in many ways because of its realism, symbolism, and the depth of each character, and how these very complicated characters interacted with each other and their new apocalyptic reality. So the comic starts off at a full sprint, and what we see is two officers, which turn out to be Rick and Shane, taking cover behind their police cruiser, and they're under heavy fire from someone in a beat-up pickup truck not too far off. Now at this point, we don't know what the assailant is using, but whatever it is, it's big and loud. So as shots ping and ding off of their cruiser, Shane leans over and says, "This is not good." He also says he doesn't think the shooter is from around here. And Rick agrees, he says he knew there was going to be problems when their neighboring county, Grant County, opened a prison. And he feels like this person, whoever he or she is, they're probably an escapee. At this point, we get a very good look at the shooter. He's older, missing teeth, kind of hillbillyish, and he's screaming, "I ain't going back. I'll die first," as he cocks a shotgun. Still hunkered down and taking fire, Rick says, "Listen, we can't stay here. We're out in the middle of nowhere. Our closest backup is about 10 miles away. We need to make a move and we need to be strategic about it. So how about I run to that ditch that's not too far away to try to surround him and you give me cover fire." And that's what they do, but as soon as Rick takes off, Shane's gun gets shot out his hand, and Rick takes a shotgun blast to the chest as Shane watches, in horror, screaming his name. The scene changes drastically, and now we see Rick in an empty hospital room in a hospital bed attached to an IV. He sits up, scoots himself to the edge of the bed, tries to walk, but falls. His legs are too weak to sustain his weight. He calls for a nurse. No one comes, so he tries to climb to the bed himself, but he's still too weak. So he just sits there, just waiting on the ground for someone to show up, but no one does. Eventually, after gathering his strength, he manages to get to his feet, checks the cabinets, and finds his clothes. He puts them on, shuffles to the door, and shouts out, but there's no answer. The entire hospital seems to be deserted, and Rick can't make sense of it, so he just wanders the empty hospital hallways, shouting, hoping someone will return his call. At some point, he comes across an elevator. He hops in, pushes a random floor, and waits. There's a ding, the doors slide open, and a corpse falls in. Rick freaks out, screams, jumps back, and he doesn't know what to do. He drops to the floor to get a better look at this stinking, rotting corpse and just screams help frantically, just over and over, but no one's there. No one comes. He drags himself to his feet, shuffles down the hall, sliding against the wall in utter shock, and just wanders down the halls in a stupor. At the end of one hallway, he reaches a dead end. It's the cafeteria, but the doors are locked. Not just locked, but there's a slab of broken wood slid through the door handle so no one can go in or out. And Rick's perplexed. He's like, why would someone do that? So, he opens it. Zombies. Grunting, snarling zombies. The cafeteria is full of them. On the floor, crouched and standing. The closest one staggers forward. Rick's like, in shock, stumbles backwards, falls, and the zombies just stagger after him, out the newly unlocked door, into the hallway, and Rick just scrambles backwards on the floor. Gets to his feet, rushes a door, a zombie on his tail. They stumble into a stairwell, down the steps. The zombie's neck snaps as Rick falls on top of it. Rick pulls himself up and staggers down the stairwell with the remaining zombies on his tail. Understanding why the cafeteria was locked now, he pulls his belt off and ties it around the door handles, locking the zombies back in. At some point, he makes it to the hospital's parking garage and spots a sole, dilapidated car. He tries the handle, but it's locked. So, he walks it. As he makes his way out to the hospital entrance, we can see that the surrounding area is overgrown with grass and weeds, and the building itself looks as if it's been abandoned. So Rick just walks, and on his way, he sees a car crash with a corpse hanging out of it, and he's just shocked. But there's nothing that can be done, so he just, keeps walking. Eventually, he sees a bike wheel sticking out the grass, and when he walks up, he is just shocked. There is this half-decomposed zombie woman just laying in the grass, unable to move, grunting, and they just stare at each other, and Rick is aghast. He can do nothing but cover his mouth and stare. So after some time, he's able to collect himself and walk away. But he only gets a couple of feet before he just collapses and breaks down. Somehow he's able to pick up the bike, regain his composure, and continue on his way. He happens upon a house in a residential neighborhood that looks as overgrown and abandoned as the hospital, and he stops, throws down the bike, mounts the stairs, opens the door, and goes in. And the house is trashed, but he just keeps going. And in this frame, we see the picture on the wall, so we know that this is his house. That's his family. He checks the bedroom. It's in the same condition as the rest of the house, just looking like it's been torn up and looted out. With nothing left to do, he just heads out on the back porch and comes to the realization that it's all gone. There's nothing left. He wanders out into the grass, spots a car he doesn't recognize, and goes to inspect. But it's empty, so he just turns around and wham! He's hit with a shovel on the back of the head. Then we see this kid with a shovel, and he's like, Dad, I got one of them. And his dad pops up, and he's like, Son, that's not a zombie. That man's alive. Help me get him into the house. Sometime later, Rick wakes up in a daze, and suddenly the father's there, and his son's sitting at a table behind him. And he says, Hey, I'm glad you're awake. Would you like to join us for dinner? And Rick is like, What the is going on? And the guy's like, Just come and join us for dinner, and we'll explain everything. And so they do, and the first thing the father does is apologize on behalf of his son for hitting Rick in the head with the shovel. And he says, I'm sorry, my boy thought you were one of those things. And Rick says, what, those monsters, like the ones at the hospital? And, what is going on? What is all of this about? And the father's, he's confused, and he says, wait, son, you don't know anything? You don't know what's happened at all? And Rick says, no. And so they share their stories, and Rick tells the father how he was shot in a shootout and woke up in the hospital with all those monsters around. And the father tells Rick that some time ago, the zombies just popped up out of nowhere. The media shut down a few weeks ago, and there really hasn't been much else. He also says that the only thing they've been able to determine is that a good blow to the back of the head slows down the zombies. He says before the media stopped broadcasting altogether, they recommended that everyone relocate to larger cities because they could be better protected there. But he's decided to take his chances here. Rick says he has family in Atlanta, and he's sure that that's where his wife and child are holding up, and he plans to go there. He says if he's going to Atlanta, he's going to need a car, and he asks the father if he'd like to go shopping. And it's not until they stop here at the police station that the father learns that Rick is actually a police officer. Once inside, the two formally introduce each other, and Rick Grimes meets Morgan Jones. Rick raids the armament and secures a ton of guns and ammunition for himself and Morgan. Then he suits up, and for the first time, we see Rick wearing that trademark hat. After gathering their supplies and heading outside, Rick treats Morgan to a police car and tells him to use it at his leisure. Morgan says he's eternally grateful for Rick's help and wishes him well. As Rick loads his supplies in his car, he hears something. It's a zombie blocked by a gate. Rick freezes. He raises his gun, but Morgan says no. Morgan convinces Rick not to shoot the zombie, saying that he can't reach them from where he is, and Rick will likely need the ammo in the future. Rick agrees. The two men say bye, then depart. Rick locks the gate behind him and takes off. Heading towards Atlanta, Rick stops, exits the car, leaving the engine running, walks to the side of the road, revisits the zombie he found next to the bike earlier in the day, and puts it out of its misery. After shedding a few tears, he heads back in his car, closes the door, and drives away. Alright, so that's my recap of the first issue of The Walking Dead. If you'd like me to recap the second edition, let me know, and feel free to give me feedback either way. Okay, y'all all take care.